apple pie so much? Is it the sugar, the butter, the crunch of the pastry, or just that delicious sweet apple flavour? Today I'm going to show you 3 alternative apple desserts, starting with this Tarte Tatin. It's a French dish in which fruit is caramelised in sugar and butter, then covered in a pastry and baked in the oven. You can use all sorts of fruit, but we're going to be using apple. Start by peeling your apple. I'm actually going to be using 2 for this dish. Then I'm chopping it up like this. Slices about 1 centimetre thick from the top all the way down to the bottom. And I'm doing the same with the second apple. Depending on the size of the pan that you're using, you may need more or less. Rather than cutting out the centre of the apple, I wanted to keep in the star. So instead, I'm just removing all the pips. To make this dish, we need a metal pan which can also go in the oven. The handle on this one is also metal and it's oven safe. I'm heating it up on a low temperature and sprinkling over some granulated sugar to cover the base. After a minute or 2, it slowly starts to melt, and while it's melting, I'm sprinkling over the rest of the sugar. I'm using 100 grams altogether. I'm keeping the pan on a low temperature, and you can see it's gently starting to brown. Next, I'm adding 50 grams of butter and stirring it into the sugar. This is super hot and sticky now, do be careful, you don't want to get it onto your skin. And if you find even on a low temperature it's boiling very heavily, you can regulate the temperature by just turning it off for a minute every now and again. Next, I'm carefully adding our slices of apple into the pan, and I'm going to leave them here to caramelise for a few minutes. Then turn them over to give them a really good coating. You can see the sugar is becoming thick and syrupy, and it's starting to smell really good. If you like, at this stage, you could sprinkle over some cinnamon. I'm leaving them to simmer again for a couple of minutes. Then I'm turning the heat off to allow it to cool slightly. For the pastry, I'm using this ready rolled puff pastry. It really is very convenient. Just open it up and unroll it. Next, I'm taking a plate, slightly bigger than the base of our pan, place it on the pastry, and cut around it with a knife to give us a circle. You have to be a little bit careful with this part, trying to peel it off the paper without stretching or tearing it. And there we go. We're going to cover over the fruit. Do be careful because it is still very hot. I draped mine over the top, and I'm using a wooden spatula to roughly tuck it in all the way around the side. You don't need to worry about it being too pretty. And to let the hot air out, I'm piercing in a few holes too. And now it's ready to bake. I'm placing it in a preheated oven for about 35 minutes. It should be golden and brown like this. I'm putting it down on a cooling rack, then we need to turn it over onto a plate. There's no easy way to do this, you've kinda just gotta go for it. Make sure you hold the plate firmly onto the pan because you don't want to spill any or burn yourself. Then quickly turn it. And with a bit of luck, when we lift off the pan, it'll all be together in a beautiful tart. If any did stick in the pan, you can just scrape them off and position them back on the tart. You can see it's beautiful and golden, delicious caramelised apples. And you can still make out the stars in the centre of the apple pieces. I'm going to decorate mine a bit further using some pecans. I'm putting 4 in the centre like this, and 4 more around the outside. And each piece that I cut should have 1. And there we go, it's ready to serve. When we remove a piece, you can see how sticky and gooey it is. And having the pecan on top adds a beautiful little crunch to it too. And I'm going to serve it with a scoop of ice cream. So how does it taste? Beautiful sweet caramelised apple on a light flaky pastry. Yeah, it tastes really good. And having the pecan adds a beautiful little crunch to it too. If you've tried making it, let me know how you got on in the comments. Right, on to the next. I'm going to show you how to make this quick and easy apple tart. It's quite a delicate and light dessert, but it's really easy to make. Here's how. I'm going to be using 2 apples. For all of the recipes in this video, I'm using these Gala apples. Just look how beautiful this one is, and they taste delicious. We'll start by removing the core. I'm using this clever gadget which pushes straight through the middle and allows me to easily remove the centre. Then I'm cutting it in half and slicing it into nice thin pieces like this. I did this with 2 apples and placed all the slices into a bowl. Then I drizzled over the juice from half a lemon, and I'm adding 3 tablespoons of sugar. Then give them a mix to make sure they're all coated. Next, I'm rolling out some more puff pastry, and I'm using one of these slices of apple as a gauge to work out how wide we need to cut it. We want about ½ an inch each side of the slice. So cut yourself off a piece and carefully peel it off the paper. I'm transferring it onto this baking paper, which I've already sat on an oven tray. Next, I'm taking some apricot jam And I'm using a knife to spread a channel of jam down the middle of the pastry, like this. I'm giving it a nice coating, but not too thick. Then take your apple slices and start positioning them on top. We want to layer them like this so they overlap, and work your way down the pastry. I like doing this part, it's quite fun. And once you've reached the bottom, that's it, it's ready to bake. But first I'm using some more of the pastry and the rest of the apples we sliced to make another one alongside. Then place them in the oven. They'll take about 15 to 20 minutes at 400 degrees Fahrenheit, which is around 200 degrees Celsius. Now they're golden brown, I remove them from the oven, and to finish it off I'm transferring it onto this chopping board and dusting over a little icing sugar. If you like, you could add some almond flakes too. I'm chopping this into 4 dainty pieces, and it makes a beautiful light dessert. And if you like, why not serve it with a little cream? The pastry is beautiful and flaky, and those layers of apple with a hint of apricot really do taste delicious. It's such an easy one to make, I definitely recommend it. And next I'm going to show you how to make this apple cobbler. It's a fruit filling which is covered in a biscuit topping or a batter before you bake it. It's a beautiful hot pudding and a great alternative to an apple pie. To make it, we need to peel, core and slice 6 apples. So I'm going to use this gadget. It's really clever. It's got these prongs at the end of a sort of corkscrew and a handle at the other end to operate it. There's a large suction cup at the bottom which we can use to fix it firmly onto a base. This makes it really secure. To use it, slide back the corkscrew, push an apple onto the prongs, and turn the handle. It automatically peels it with this clever blade. Then there's another blade which slices it into a spiral. And it cuts out the core too, you just slide it off. Pretty cool, huh? It really is clever and super quick. If you've got a bunch of apples to do, it'll save you a load of time. And if there's any skin on the top that you don't want, you can just remove it. Then I'm chopping the apple in half. And there we go, loads of pre-sliced apple pieces. I'm putting them all into an oven dish. I used 6 apples altogether. Then I'm tipping over 70 grams of sugar, a teaspoon of ground cinnamon, and 1 of nutmeg, a large tablespoon of cornstarch, and a drizzle of vanilla extract. Mix it all together to make sure everything's got a good coating, and I'm compacting it down a little into the dish. To make the biscuity topping, we need to add 200 grams of plain flour into a mixing bowl, then 70 grams of sugar, a tablespoon of baking powder, and a pinch of salt. Then mix them together. Next, I chopped up 150 grams of butter into cubes, added it to the mixture, and I worked it in with my hands. If you prefer, you could use a food processor. Once you're done, it should almost be like breadcrumbs. Next, I made my own half and half by adding 75 millilitres of milk into a jug and 75 millilitres of cream. Give them a mix, then pour half of it over the topping and work it in. Add in the second half and mix it until you've got something which looks like this. It should be quite firm, not too runny and not too dry. And we're going to use this to cover our apples. Now, instead of spreading it over in a uniform layer, we're going to make kind of dollops dotted around all over the top. It really doesn't have to be too neat. Don't worry if it doesn't go all the way to the edge. You can be quite sparse or make it thicker if you like. I'm actually making mine quite thick. So here it is, and it's ready to bake. I'm baking it at a temperature of 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is around 180 degrees Celsius, and it'll take around 50 minutes to an hour. And there we go, it's kind of mottled and golden. It smells delicious and it looks really quite different. Let's dig into it and see what we've got. Ooh, it's piping hot. It's like a biscuity, cakey topping over delicious apples. Of course, I'm serving it with ice cream. You could use normal cream or even custard. The topping has a nice crispy coating on it and a soft, cakey texture underneath. And it really smells amazing. Let's give it a taste. The topping is actually quite light, there's a bit of a crunch to it and a beautiful sweetness. It goes perfectly with the apples underneath and you can really make out the spiced cinnamon and nutmeg. If you'd like to see how to make this amazing apple pie together with some other apple recipes and also some fun apple life hacks, you can click on this video. Or maybe you'd like to take a look at some of these kitchen gadgets. Have fun, stay safe.